Hello everyone, Kilbrax Gaming here, and today we're going to take a dive into the Fatalis mods that are currently available for Monster Hunter Iceborne on Nexus Mods. Right now we have Crimson Fatalis, White Fatalis, and Xeno Fatalis. I'll be approaching this video as someone who may assume you have prior knowledge of the original Fatalis' moveset from Iceborne, so I won't spend too much time going over original content and instead focusing on all the new movesets the mod brings, as well as some of the visuals and new concepts of things you have to keep in mind while fighting them. Firstly, I'll start with some brief differences between the original and the new ones, starting with the old and White Fatalis. I'm not sure if it has more HP, but White Fatalis does seem to have much higher defense, as my normal builds seem to hit half as hard as they originally would. And the fight does also seem to take twice as long. Also worth noting is that without Mind's Eye, your hits will bounce off his neck and his wings. When you fly down to fight White Fatalis, you'll notice that there are puddles everywhere on the ground, all across the stage. Also, every hit of his will give you Lightning Blight, and any level of Lightning Blight while getting hit in a puddle vastly increases the chances of getting stunned, paralyzed, or both. Even with Lightning Resistance 3 and having your Lightning Resistance at 31, you can still get stunned or paralyzed during many, if not all, of his hits. Finally, White Fatalis' third phase is just gorgeous and awesome. I mean, come on guys, look at this. This is just freaking crazy awesome. Now for some brief notes on Crimson Fatalis. He seems to have similar in health and defense to the original Fatalis, but his skin is much harder, and equipping Mind's Eye is very viable because the arms, body, and head. Besides that, your purple sharpness weapon will bounce off of every body part, the tail, the wings, the back legs even, which can make fighting him very frustrating because, you know, when you try and hit his stomach and you hit his back legs and you bounce, yeah, you have to either be really precise, have a really precise weapon, or just use Mind's Eye. Many of his moves also give Fire Blight or Blast Blight. Crimson Fatalis is also much weaker to Dragon element than any of the other Fatalises. You'll actually definitely want to try a Dragon element weapon instead of a raw damage weapon. It's very good for it. I opted to use Kiar Dragon dual blades. They did a lot more damage than the Fatalis dual blades. Maybe Alatran dual blades could have done just as well, but yeah, definitely go for Dragon element because he's very weak to that. His head is also extremely difficult to break, but I found it entirely necessary to do so. On the mod page it says it isn't necessary to break the head, and you made it difficult to break the head just so you get more of the effects. Because he shoots white fire a lot of times. It looks great, but I didn't find that to be accurate in my experience. I kept getting one-shotted by all of his stuff in the third phase. And the area of effect is really huge when you don't break his head, so I broke his head. It's really difficult to do so. I actually ran Part Breaker 1 on my build and then 2 Part Breakers on my Evasion Mantle just so I could get the head break. I highly recommend it, mainly just for at least for that AoE decrease that you'll get when you break his head. Crimson's fire also engulfs the entire field. Not only on phase 3 will he guard help as per usual, but in all phases many of his fire attacks leave scorched earth on the ground that will harm you if you're on it. This makes fire resistance very necessary to help mitigate the tick damage you get from the fire, but also this makes peak performance less viable since it's very difficult to maintain. Comets and meteors are a big factor in a Crimson Fatalis fight. Some of these are variations on moves and are deliberate and telegraphable. Many comets that land in the fight seem to appear and land at total random. I'm honestly not entirely sure what the rhyme or reason for these comets are. The hitboxes do seem to be small though, so many times they don't land, but when they do they can deal anywhere from 30 to 70% of your health. As a quick side note, comets will follow you all the way to base camp, so if you faint and you're dead and they cart you back, you could still get hit by comets, so you might want to watch out for that. And now finally for the Xeno Fatalis mod, there are 2 versions of the Xeno mod, one with reduced health and decreased defense, and one with normal Fatalis HP and defense. Xeno probably has much higher health and you do much more damage to it and its head specifically. Its head is very breakable, and a decent amount of tension to his head will likely forward a very easy head break, and with more focus you can get to very reliably. Visually, Xeno has more blue-white fire until if and when you break its head. Much like Xeno, I think the beams come straight from Xeno'jiiva's beams, so I'm pretty sure that's where the moves come from. I also believe that Xeno Fatalis was supposed to be more of a fun mod and less of a extremely difficult mod, so he's probably the easiest of the three. But he's a heck of a lot of fun. Now, many of Xeno Fatalis' attacks are delayed explosions, which make for some very interesting situations. For instance, his Claw Slam has a delayed explosion, while he may shoot his normal delayed explosion shots like Fatalis would. This means if you're attacking his stomach, it is possible you have to evade all three in succession. The slam, the explosion, and the second explosion, the one he shoots at you while he's targeting you. Now, many of his explosion attacks, much like White Fatalis, have a big lingering hitbox, especially in the third phase that is kind of hard to describe. Like White Fatalis, I know that with an evade mantle, I've evaded it and I still get hit by it just because it lingers. So that's something you'll want to watch out for. Also, many of his attacks cause a blue aura to fill the stage. This does no damage, but it just looks amazing. Now we'll get a little more specific and cover some of the new moves. First, we'll start with some of the basic move differences from normal Fatalis to all of these Fatalises. While most of the physical attacks are the same, it's important to know some differences. For instance, when Crimson Fatalis swipes the ground, it is normal. But when he smashes the ground, a 2-ring explosion marks the spot where it landed, so not only must you evade the slam, you must evade the explosions afterwards. White Fatalis' ground smash and swipe are normal, but it is also almost an instant stun or paralyze if it lands without any resistances, and if it lands while the player is in a puddle. Xeno Fatalis' swipe is normal, but his Claw Slam will cause an explosion on the spot it lands about 2 seconds afterwards. Now we'll try and cover some more of the advanced moves. First we'll start with the cone attacks. Crimson Fatalis' cone attack in the third stage is white hot and very, very dangerous. Without a head break and even with 20 fire resistance, it can kill you very quickly. His also ends with a 2 or 3 ring explosion depending on whether or not he's in the third stage and his head is broken. White Fatalis, on the other hand, his cone attack will shoot lightning, and at the end of his attack a lightning strike will happen where his head was shooting, with the phase 3 lightning being bigger and more dangerous. It won't kill you as quickly, but again, without any resistances, it will paralyze you or stun you or do a lot of damage at the end of the cone, as opposed to Crimson Fatalis, who does a lot more of his damage with the cone attack itself. Xeno, on the other hand, will have a huge explosion when his cone attack is done, and it'll actually be really tough to evade. You can evade it, kind of, but it's such a big area of effect that even if you do evade it, it lingers long enough. It has a linger on it that lingers long enough to actually hurt you still. So it's kind of just better to run or spam roll to outrange the attack altogether. Now we'll look at the pour attack. I just call it that because this is when Fatalis pours fire, or in this case lightning or dragon element onto the ground. For Crimson's fire pour attack, it is actually quite dangerous, has more range and does far more damage than regular Fatalises. You will also find that normal Fatalis, you can clutch claw onto his face or body, and it's a good way to defend yourself against this attack and also get a tenderize for free. That's actually how you're supposed to fight it. It's not really the case with Crimson Fatalis. Crimson Fatalis does so much damage and it has so much range on it that even if you are clutch clawed onto his body or his face, it'll still hit you and almost kill you if you don't have health regen. White Fatalis' pour attack, elemental pour attack, on the other hand, is totally different. The initial part of his strike is a lightning beam with good range and deals massive damage, but if you avoid this and avoid staying directly under the lightning coming from his mouth, you can deal damage without taking any at all. And finally, Xeno Fatalis' pour attack is pretty much just exactly like normal Fatalis', except it has an awesome blue aura effect afterwards. It doesn't deal any damage and you shouldn't have to worry about it. It's just really awesome to look at, especially when he does them in succession and there's just blue aura all over the field. It's pretty tight. Now for a move I hope you're all familiar with. It's the one where Fatalis will shoot a fire beam and he'll walk backwards or forwards for about 9 seconds. This is pretty much the same for Xeno and Crimson. They just amplify the beam for Crimson, make it more fiery, and they make it blue for Xeno. Pretty great effects. However, White Fatalis is a little different. He has an explosion attack on his body that's really subtle and not very visual, but it will kill you or deal a lot of damage if you get too close to his body. It happens when he initiates the beam. This keeps the player from punishing it too fast, as you have to wait to clutch claw him before, or you have to wait till the attack is done before you can clutch claw him. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the big explosion blast that these Fatalises have. This is where things get a little dicey, because these blasts are eccentrically visual, but also very deadly, and they're very, very different from normal Fatalis. All of them are special and different, so I'll break that down. Xeno Fatalis's explosion shots, especially in the third stage, are delayed most of the time, but have massive AoE, much like Safi'jiiva. They can be extremely difficult to iframe, as the linger in the AoE make it so that even if you iframe with an evasion mantle, the linger will still hit you. You also have to watch out for Rocksteady Mantle, because if you're using Rocksteady and you linger in the AoE, you could die. The delay is meant to give you time to run out of it, pretty much, I would say. Crimson Fatalis's big explosion attacks look amazing, especially before the head break, often with white or blue fire. But will definitely kill you, and you should definitely run as far away as you can. Now, White Fatalis is the world ender with this with his big explosion attacks. They have range that's almost impossible to outrun, a linger effect that can trap you even if you do evade, and an extremely high chance of a one-shot even if you do break his head once or twice, and even with 31 lightning resistance. It's a pretty gnarly move. I died more to that trying to run White Fatalis than any other move by far. You really only have two options, either run and Superman dive or Dragon Pod. Diving is much safer, I would say, but it's up to you. Well, that's about covers it for all the moves I wanted to go over as far as the different functionalities of all the different moves that he has. Now I'll show some clips of some of the different moves that he has that are... The differences are more aesthetic, so I hope you enjoy. And finally, let's go over some builds. For White Fatalis, lightning resistance will help you not get one-shotted by many of his moves and will highly reduce their damage. I can't recommend paralysis and stun resist enough. Without it, virtually any move can seem to stun or paralyze you without warning. And for that reason, I highly recommend getting at least one head break in a fight against White Fatalis. I would say it's pretty essential. In the third stage, he has a lot of moves that'll kill you in one shot regardless, but getting one head break at least helps mitigate the area of effect. And of course, the free damage is really helpful when this guy is just trying to kill you. So I actually equipped a part breaker on my evasion mantle just to help me get that head break. Also, Divine Blessing never helps. If you get a Divine Blessing proc with at least 30%, when he does some of his one-hit kill moves, you can probably survive them. So that's what I would recommend. For Crimson Fatalis, no surprise, fire resistance will help you out tremendously. It's a must since he covers the ground in fire, and that tick damage will hurt a lot more without it. I would also say you abandon peak performance if that's a part of your high DPS build like it is mine typically, because yeah, that fire damage makes it really difficult to maintain. Heat Guard is nice. You can roll with Blast Blight if you like. I get hit with Blast Blight quite a bit, and I just roll out of it. Like, it hardly ever affects me. The main thing is that actually Crimson Fatalis is extremely weak to Dragon element. I know they all say that they're weak to Dragon, but Crimson Fatalis in this mod, he is actually very weak to Dragon. At least for certain with dual blades, my Raw Fatalis build didn't even come close to the Kiar Dragon build or the Alatreon dual blades build that I used. So if you can, try and roll with element, at least experiment with it and compare, and that way you'll know which one's better, but definitely try Dragon. Thunderproof Mantle and Fireproof Mantle are of course extremely viable, especially if you have the Fatalis gear and you want to run them with Tool Specialist 5. It's pretty conceivable that the majority of the fight you can be having those mantles on, and if not, you can have Temporal. I will say that for some of Xeno's attacks, Temporal doesn't proc. But yeah, for Crimson and White Fatalis, those mantles are really great. Just keep in mind, they can still hurt, and they can still hurt you a lot. And White Fatalis, like I said, he'll stun you regardless. He'll stun or paralyze you regardless of what kind of lightning resistance you have or whether or not you have Lightning Blight. So just keep that in mind. For Xeno, I just recommend your standard anti-Fatalis build. That's about it. I experimented with Dragon Resistance and Fire Resistance. None of it seemed to help. He can Fire Blight you, but it's not that bad. So yeah, you can just run your standard anti-Fatalis build. Alright everyone, thanks for joining me. I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun fighting these guys too. They're all really fantastic. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Thanks for watching.